One of the things I find most interesting about the early days of Coney Island is just how experimental the ride designs were. When L.A. Thompson built his first scenic railroad, he was more or less flying blind. He didn't know if riding in a cart down artificial hills was going to attract customers. He just thought it sounded like a fun idea and put it to the test. Likewise, once his ride was a success, other ride designers decided to give it a shot for themselves, and in order to differentiate their roller coasters from his scenic railroad, they tried all sorts of bizarre ideas, many of which we can look back at and shake our heads, wondering just what in the hell they were thinking. So today we are going to take a look at 5 of the strangest early roller coaster designs. Some of these may look familiar, but every one of them has a crucial difference from how our coasters are designed today. So, won't you meet me in Dreamland?
Meet me tonight in Dreamland, under the silvery moon. Meet me tonight in Dreamland, where love's sweet roses bloom. Come with the
Number 5, the Flipflop Railway and the Loop. This is the most normal looking coaster on the list, but there is a serious problem with the design. See if you can spot it. And chances are you're scratching your head because it looks like a typical inversion coaster today, only smaller. But bear in mind that the Flip-Flop opened at Coney Island's Sea Lion Park in the late 1800s, almost 130 years before I'm making this video. And sadly, the engineer made a major mistake in how he designed it. It all comes down to the loop. Lena Beecher, the ride's inventor, saw the major engineering issue as simply how to keep riders from falling out of the car when it went upside down. To that end, he made a perfectly round loop and made sure that the cars attained enough centrifugal momentum that the sandbags and monkeys that he tested on it stayed firmly in their seats. Once he had done that, he figured the ride was good to go. Unfortunately for the Flip-Flop's human riders, and probably the monkeys as well, Beecher wasn't aware of what we now call G-forces. That feeling of heaviness you experience when you are in an accelerating vehicle. One G-force unit, called a G, is equivalent to the gravity we experience just walking around on the Earth. When you are accelerating, you experience G-forces horizontally or vertically. It's the feeling of being pushed back into your seat when you suddenly increase speed in a car, or the feeling of being pushed to the side when you take a tight turn. To give you some idea of a typical G-force experience, here are a couple of scenarios that you've probably had. Lifting off in a passenger plane will cause you to experience 1.3 Gs of vertical force, or 1.3 times the amount of force produced by gravity alone. If you take a sharp corner at 100 miles per hour in a car, you'll experience 4 Gs of horizontal force, or 4 times the amount produced by gravity alone. And there is a difference. Vertical G-force is more dangerous than horizontal. Our bodies just aren't meant to take on a bunch of extra weight, and once we get to 5 Gs of vertical force, bad things start to happen. The blood in your brain will be pushed toward your feet, causing a feeling of dizziness, grayed out vision, and even a loss of consciousness. So that's 5 Gs. The Flip-Flop Railway, with its perfectly round loop and tight turn, routinely produced 12 Gs of vertical force on its riders. As you can imagine, this was a very unpleasant experience for them and often resulted in neck injuries. In 1901, the Loop coaster, a large version of the Flip-Flop also designed by Lena Beecher with a tight, perfectly circular loop, actually caused the death of a famous New York chorus girl named Miss Kitty Kennedy. During the ride, the force of the acceleration caused internal injuries and she died within a week. Soon after, New York police actually shut down the looping rides on Coney Island. Modern-day looping coasters thankfully have abandoned the perfectly round loop, which caused sustained G-forces throughout its duration, in favor of a teardrop shape, which lessens the G-forces for most of the ride. Number 4, the Tickler. Okay, this one may get me in trouble with the roller coaster purist, but the Tickler both rolls and coasts, so I'm going to allow it. This was a gravity-powered ride that opened in Luna Park in 1906, where customers would sit in round-wheeled tubs. The attendant would then push the tub down a winding, inclined path, causing the tub to, quote, jostle, jolt, and jounce its riders about in their seats when the ride was in motion. This resulted in the passengers being pushed together, making it a very popular ride for young couples because it was a surefire recipe for canoodling. Number 3, the Steeplechase. This is both an utterly iconic design and an evolutionary dead end for coasters. This is the only ride on the list that gave its name to an entire Coney Island park, Steeplechase Park. The coaster itself was invented in England by a stage carpenter named J.W. Caudry in 1894. It featured wooden horses astride a metal track and is described in a concurrent magazine. The course is graded like the course of a switchback railway, with successive hills and valleys to enable a good, but not a dangerous speed to be kept up. The rider could vary the speed. Each horse runs along a rail raised above the course on stout upright posts, and when the rider mounts his steed and is started with a gentle push, the useful force of gravity takes the matter in hand and sees horse and rider safely to the end of their ride. George Tillieu, whose family had owned land on Coney Island for quite some time, wished to jump into the amusement park game after the opening of Sea Lion Park, with a ride that he hoped would make a super big splash and compete with the very popular Scenic Railway. Since horse racing was a big deal at Coney at the time, he bought the rights to Caudry's Steeplechase ride for $41,000, which is about $1.5 million in today's money, and set about making improvements. According to Park World Online, 6 double-saddled mechanical horses were pulled by chain lift to the top of the highest hill before taking passengers down a 1,100-foot undulating track over a stream bed and a series of hurdles all around the outside of the park. The tracks ran abreast, simulating a horse race in which gravity gave the heavier riders the advantage. Tillieu dressed his attendants as jockeys and announced the start of each ride with a bugle. Oh, and because this was the 1900s and literally everything was super dangerous, there were no seatbelts on the horses. You just had to cling on as best you could. The ride was a huge success, just as Tillieu predicted, and spawned loads of imitators. The Steeplechase lasted until 1964, when the park was purchased and then dismantled by Donald Trump's dad, Fred Trump. No comment. Today, the Steeplechase ride in its original form has only one surviving example in Blackpool, England. The new Luna Park at Coney Island has a version which is more or less a typical roller coaster, but with riders seated on saddles instead of in cars. And oh yeah, they added seatbelts. Number 2, the Top. Easily the coolest looking coaster on this list. The Top, or the Scenic Spiral Wheel as it was also known, was installed at Luna Park in 1917 and used the weight of the roller coaster cars themselves to cause the entire ride's framework to tilt, turn, and wobble as riders looped about in a spiral. And just look at it go! Doesn't that look fun? Well, the problem was that it looked fun, but the actual ride experience was pretty lackluster apparently. The cars really just went in a circle without any of the dips and hills that make roller coasters fun. The result was a ride that attracted more people wanting to watch it than people who wanted to ride it. After 4 years of declining ticket sales, it was shut down in 1921. Number 1. The LeapFrog Railway. Has this ever happened to you? You're running your railroad, sending trains back and forth along the tracks, but oops, you forgot that you have 2 trains on the same track and now they're heading right towards each other. What can you do? Building another set of tracks is expensive and time-consuming. Just letting them keep going and hoping that the atoms of each randomly position themselves to allow the engines to pass through each other rarely works out. There's got to be a better way. Well, now there is. Thanks to electrical and mechanical engineer Flipflop Railway, the duplex railway system will make the embarrassing head-on collisions between trains a thing of the past. Flipflop Railway had indeed intended for his invention to increase safety on America's rail lines, but it obviously never took off. In 1905, the Dreamland Amusement Park installed a 500-foot pier to run Stern's line, assuming that the excitement of appearing to almost hit another train would be pure entertainment for the park's customers. And maybe it was at first. A contemporary account describes the passengers in breathless excitement, momentarily anticipating disaster, realizing that their lives are in jeopardy, clinging to one another for safety, closing their eyes to the impending danger. The cars crash into one another. 32 people are hurled over the heads of 32 others. Then they are suddenly awakened to a realization of the fact that they have actually collided with another car, and yet they find themselves safe and sound, proceeding the same direction in which they started. If it was ever as exciting as this description makes it sound, the fact that the ride was just a straightforward demonstration of an admittedly pretty silly engineering feat soon left riders bored. Dreamland burned down in 1911 and the LeapFrog Railway with it. Neither was ever rebuilt. Thank you for stopping by to check out these very odd rides from Coney Island's golden age. This channel is all about the history of theme parks, rides, and the strange stories around them, so check out some of my other videos. Right now would be a great time to like this video, assuming that you actually did like it, and even if you are feeling the excitement of a ride on the Coney Island Steeplechase, go ahead and subscribe. Until next time. Thank you.